Chapter 3. After dropping Badou home, Vincent made his way along the moonlit streets to the old industrial district. He was planning to dispose of what remained of the guns and check in on the unconscious gang members that he had littered across the area earlier. As he walked, he smiled to himself, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction and wondering if things might finally be a little different. Vincent was so lost in thought that he barely noticed a figure hidden in the shadows, leaning against a metal roller door to one of the warehouses. Just as Vincent passed by, the man spoke.
"Well, you certainly had a productive day."
The man remained in the shadows, just out of sight. Vincent lunged backward instinctively. Life in the ghetto had taught him to always be on guard and ready for a fight. It wasn't every day someone could take him by surprise. "Who are you?" Vincent growled aggressively. He knew everyone who lived in the ghetto, either by face or by name. Yet, he didn't recognize the man standing before him.
"If you're looking for the guns and those guys you dealt with earlier, I took care of them while you were up on the cliffs with that Badou guy."
The stranger sauntered out of the shadows. He wore long brown pants, a gray and white hoodie, and an eye patch with a metal crucifix design that caught the moonlight. Vincent withdrew a few steps. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. Every cell in his body urged him to retreat, but Vincent had never run from a fight in his life, and despite the stranger's ominous presence, he wasn't about to start now. "What do you mean you took care of them?" Vincent didn't like the gangs, but he didn't want them killed. The man smirked and stepped further into the moonlight.
"Both the guns and the gang members are with the authorities of Ryuuga Metro. But can you trust Badou? Sounds like you two had history. I can have him arrested and taken out of here too, if it makes things easier."
The man unfolded his arms and placed them in the pockets of his hoodie. "Had them arrested? Who said you could do that?" Vincent shouted. Suddenly, he stopped, noticing that the man didn't bear the stigmata around his throat. Vincent took a moment to compose himself. This must be an officer from the metropolis. He recoiled slightly. "Look, I know we aren't supposed to have guns in here, but I dealt with it. You saw, right? I destroyed them all." Vincent paused, his eyes narrowing. "Wait, if you were here, arresting those guys, how did you know what Badou and I were talking about up on the cliffs?"
"Your mind's quite sharp. That's good. Looks like you might have some potential after all, Vincent."
Vincent's eyes widened. How in the hell did this guy know his name? It's not that people in the ghetto didn't know him. They all did. But this was a stranger. Heat flooded his cheeks as he tried to remain calm. The man smiled at Vincent and took a few steps towards him.
"Those men were trash. They fed upon the weak and hurt innocent people. They weren't going to just fall in line, even if Badou told them to. Trust me, they're better off in jail."
"You didn't answer my question," Vincent interrupted. "How did you know what I was talking about with Badou on the cliffs if you were down here?" An entertained grin lit the man's face.
"Check the top of your hat."
Vincent took off his cap and inspected it, finding nothing out of the ordinary. The stranger took his hands out of his pockets, pulling back his right sleeve and tapping a button on a small strap around his wrist. A shimmer of blue light appeared on Vincent's hat, revealing a tiny metal device no bigger than a match head. "What's this thing?" Vincent stared at the device. He had never seen anything like it before.
"That's a transceiver, a tiny bug that allows us to track a person's whereabouts and listen to their conversations."
This thing... You put it on me?" Vincent's anger bubbled to the surface. "When?" he asked sharply.
"Oh, that's been on you for about 7 days now. I was surprised by how easy it was to get close to a guy who prides himself on how guarded and tough he is. Mr. Hero."
He gestured with air quotes to Vincent's fury. "You've been watching and listening to me for 7 days?" Vincent felt a vein in his temple throb.
"That's right. Would you like to know why?"
Vincent looked up, meeting the man's belittling gaze. "Haven't you people taken enough from us?" Mistreatment from the residents of the metropolis was not unusual, but he couldn't stop the deep sadness that still filled his heart. "Does even our privacy belong to the sky people now, too?" The stranger reared his head back and smiled. His smirk shocked Vincent to the core. How could he find this amusing?
I never said that I was from the Ryuuga Metro,
the man stated suspiciously. Vincent was lost for words, struggling to comprehend what the man had insinuated. I don't understand. I thought...
You thought wrong, because of your ignorance. The world is a big place, Vincent, and there are more people out there than the ones living here.
Vincent took a step forward without even realizing it. Then why did you arrest everyone? Just who are you? Where are you from? I don't understand.
Who I am isn't important right now, and I come from a place that I doubt you've heard of. The reason we have been observing you is because of your power. It's not often we see a melee meister of your caliber without specialist training.
We? Melee meister? Vincent's head was spinning. He needed answers, but every time the man spoke, it just raised more questions. Careful not to distract himself further, Vincent tried to stay on topic. And the others? Why arrest them if you aren't even from here? Did you think you were doing the right thing or something? Vincent softened his posture as he began to explain the situation further. Look, here in the ghettos, we handle things ourselves, without getting the Metro involved. Those bastards don't exactly have our best interests at heart.
Yeah, I've noticed that. There's definitely a strained relationship between the people of the ghetto and citizens of Ryuuga.
We are Ryuuga, Vincent corrected aggressively. We were here first. That city came along long after.
Whoa, calm down, slugger. I wasn't trying to offend. I was just...
The man hesitated for a moment. Finally, his face shifted to reveal a devious, lopsided grin.
Truth is, I was doing you a favor.
What's that supposed to mean? Vincent felt uneasy about where this conversation was heading. He didn't know this stranger, but it was clear that he wanted something from Vincent.
In the time I spent watching you, all you did was laze around all day and fight. You'd wake up and go looking for trouble, or wait until trouble found you. Then you'd jump up that cliff every damn day and think about leaving. But the truth is, you were never going to leave. Not while you had to worry about those guys.
The man chuckled lightly.
Hell, you said as much while you were up there spilling your heart to Badou earlier. I don't just think I did the right thing. I know I did the right thing.
Vincent's chest tightened as he struggled valiantly to control the deep-rooted rage inside him. This outsider didn't know the first thing about his struggles, yet there was a kernel of truth to his accusation. Vincent shook his head. Listen, you can't just...
No, you listen. You get off on helping people. You're the big fish in a small pond, and it's just the way you like it. It's quite pathetic, really. Besides, from what I can tell, everyone here is terrified of you. Probably because none of them seem to know what a meister is here. But that's beside the point.
The man shook his head.
Regardless, you just recycle those thugs, using them as punching bags while you play the hero over and over again. You wanted a reason to leave? Well, now you have one. No need to thank me.
Vincent grabbed the tiny transceiver and crushed it between his fingers. Let me get this straight. You don't live here, or even in the metropolis for that matter. But you come in here unannounced and uninvited and spy on me? Vincent's muscles tightened as his body thrummed in anger. And you dare call me arrogant? Look, I'm strong enough to take care of myself. I don't need some kid calling the shots and deciding what's best for everyone. The mysterious man stiffened slightly, and his eye twitched. He was shorter than Vincent, but only by a few inches. Content with the moral victory, Vincent turned to walk away. It wasn't worthwhile to fight someone from outside the walls and potentially cause more trouble for the residents.
Petulant child, he replied smugly. You don't know the first thing about what it means to be strong.
Vincent stopped in his tracks, with his shoulders hunched. He turned back slowly, biting his lower lip while the corner of his mouth twitched to a sneer. Are you trying to start a fight? The stranger sauntered over until he was nearly nose to nose with Vincent.
I'm not trying, and it wouldn't be much of a fight.
Vincent cracked his neck from side to side and took a fighting stance. The intruder pulled his sleeve back down and put his hands back into the pockets of his hoodie, an evil now present on his face. "I guess we're doing this then," Vincent stated calmly. "I hope you're ready for this."
"There's the arrogance again," the young man replied. "Let's just see what Ryuga's hero is made of, shall we?"
Although sporting a vast amount of open space, the industrial district was mostly avoided by the residents of the ghetto. This was Viper territory. Graffiti marked the floors, doors, and walls, and several metal bins littered the district, used as fire pits during the night. While the area was usually filled with rambunctious delinquents, the maze of concrete and metal was now filled with an eerie silence. Strong winds blew between the narrow alleyways that barely separated some of the buildings, emitting a howling sound that added to the haunted ambiance of the moonlit industrial graveyard. Suddenly, the sound of destruction thundered across the vacant labyrinth of metal constructs. Buildings collapsed, pillars were thrown clear from their foundations, and large portions of the ground were blown open as Vincent and the stranger fought with the force of a natural disaster. Several cracks spread through the old factory's thick concrete wall before crumbling, leaving a gaping hole where Vincent had fallen through. Gasping for air, Vincent wiped the dirt and dust from his face with the back of his hand. He looked down, perplexed at the dark red smear across his skin and the strange metallic taste in his mouth. He couldn't remember the last time he had ever experienced pain, much less had blood drawn in a fight. "What is this feeling?" Vincent thought, a maniacal grin spreading across his face. His heart was racing, and he couldn't feel the blood coursing through his veins. He wasn't scared. He wasn't even tempted to run. Instead, he was exhilarated. "Who in the hell are you?" he whispered.
"I'm the guy teaching you a lesson," the man confidently replied, his clothes still immaculate with not a hair out of place.
Vincent slowly rose to his feet. "Your attitude really pisses me off. But to be honest, I can't remember the last time I've had this much fun in a fight. Nobody's ever made me work this hard," Vincent replied eagerly. Bouncing on the balls of his feet, he took up a boxing stance.
"If you're having fun, that means I'm not doing my job," the man said coldly, adjusting the glove on his left hand and pulling it tight.
Vincent made the first move, darting forwards with enough explosive power to create a small crater where he had been standing. He swung wildly, missing by a hair's breadth as the man casually evaded each strike. Vincent continued with a flurry of punches and kicks until the man unexpectedly caught hold of the back of Vincent's head, slamming his face into a thrusted knee. Vincent momentarily lost consciousness as his head bounced upward with a stream of blood spewing from his nose. He threw Vincent back to the ground before delivering a lightning-fast kick to his solar plexus. Vincent held his sides, struggling to breathe. He was clearly outmatched. Blood trickled from his mouth and down his chin. He looked up, only to see his opponent standing over him with a cold, murderous intent.
"Still having fun?"
the man asked, unimpressed with Vincent's lack of ability. Vincent clambered onto his hands and knees. His vision was blurred and his body ached. Nevertheless, he smiled maniacally. Adrenaline rushed through Vincent's body, and it felt like every cell was on fire. Vincent laughed under his breath, but before he could utter a word in response, the man's foot struck Vincent firmly in the teeth. On the other side of the compound, a heavy, thick wall crushed inward, with Vincent embedded among the debris. With Vincent momentarily incapacitated, the man walked casually across the lot. His menacing shadow stretched out across the warehouse floor as he entered. Careful not to show his pain, Vincent spat blood from his mouth and rubbed his tongue across the backs of his teeth. Miraculously, they were still in place. Their eyes met, and the color drained from Vincent's face. He didn't know how much longer he would be able to keep this up. So far, he hadn't managed to land a single blow. His vision was dark around the edges, and his thoughts slowed.
"You're strong, but I expected a lot more. Listen, you might be able to beat some street thugs like it's nothing, but in my world, you're weak."
Every word he spoke dripped with contempt.
"You have raw talent, but you don't know how to use it. Come find me when you want to know what true strength is."
He turned to walk away, but as he did so, Vincent's silhouette rose from the ground, a red glow emanating from his body. The stranger stopped and smiled expectantly.
Well then, are we finally ready to take this seriously?
He turned around and slowly marveled at the sight before him. A series of markings had stretched across Vincent's face, arms, legs, and chest. They glowed a bright red, with yellow portions of energy surging throughout.
Interesting.
The man took a half step back.
Looks like you...
Without warning, a powerful punch slammed into his face. The sheer sound of the impact shook the ground beneath their feet, and the man was sent hurtling out into the open district, crashing into a building across the far side of the lot. Vincent suddenly felt a sharp surge of pain travel through his arm. It radiated from the tips of his fingers right through to his shoulder, hurting him tremendously. Still, this was the power he needed to win. He shook out his arms, trying to wave away the discomfort. Bursting up through the broken concrete debris, the man emerged, slightly shaken from the impact.
Okay,
he said, taking a deep breath.
So, you're a little...
A clap of thunder erupted as Vincent closed the distance between them, launching another attack. The noise and vibrations from this strike rattled the foundations of the district itself. Only this time, the stranger hadn't moved. Blocking Vincent's blow, the stranger held two huge handguns. One crossed over the other. The large guns resembled Desert Eagle semi-automatic pistols. Although they were identical in shape and design, their color differed. One was ivory, the other onyx. Both pistols glistened beautifully in the moonlight, drawing attention to the golden cross that ran from muzzle to hammer on both sides.
Sorry, not this time,
he grunted. Vincent chuckled, ignoring the second wave of pain as his fist pressed against the weapons. What happened to getting rid of the guns, huh? Vincent asked. His opponent's expression turned icy cold, murderous intent filling the air again.
Don't mistake these for those pieces of scrap,
he growled, pressing harder against Vincent before flickering his arms outward. Vincent flew back a few meters, his feet scraping across the ground. As he came to a stop, Vincent noticed that the pistols had vanished. There were no visible holsters or pouches on the man, apart from the pockets of his hoodie, which couldn't possibly hold weapons of that size. Where'd your little pea shooters go?
I wonder,
the man replied calmly, ignoring Vincent's attempt to goad him. Vincent darted in swiftly, only this time he received an extremely heavy punch to the face. His head rocked back from the impact, but before he could recover, he was inundated by a series of hooks, jabs, and uppercuts. Even though these attacks still hurt, they felt different from the initial blow. They felt lighter, and they lacked weight. Regardless, Vincent still struggled to regain his composure and end the tirade. Panic threatened to overwhelm him. His breathing hitched as he tucked his chin down to his chest, raising his hands and shielding his head from the barrage of punches. His right arm still felt oddly weak from the pain that had set in, and he noticed that the red markings were beginning to fade. It was a night of firsts for Vincent. He had never in his life felt this weak, but his resolution to persevere did not waver. His single-minded determination and willpower held strong. In response to Vincent's tight guard, the attacker quickly shifted his feet, bobbing and twisting his upper body before throwing a powerful uppercut. It slipped between Vincent's elbows and struck him in the jaw, rattling his brain. Vincent's head rocked upwards, and his hat was sent flying. The red markings covering his body flickered, and his arms fell lifelessly by his side. Careful not to give Vincent a moment's rest, the man grabbed the front of his singlet and delivered a final thunderous strike into his stomach. Vincent doubled over as the air suddenly abandoned his lungs.
That all you got?
Vincent coughed out breathlessly, hunched over with blood running down his chin and hair strewn across his face. The man threw a downward punch to land the deciding blow. Only this time, Vincent stopped it, catching the man by the wrist.
You haven't won yet,
Vincent stuttered with an air of self-assured confidence. The man stared back at Vincent with an emotionless expression.
Is that right?
Suddenly, a massive blast of white and blue light appeared from the man's hand. It exploded directly into Vincent's face, sending him tumbling backward and violently skipping across the concrete. Vincent slammed his hand into the ground, bracing his legs and sliding to a stop. What the hell was that? He'd never seen such an attack before. He looked up, smoke sizzling from his face, but the man had vanished. Vincent looked around, frantically searching, but he saw nothing but empty space and the destruction their fight had caused. Coward! He yelled aggressively as his breath returned to him. Vincent waited a few more seconds in anticipation, but there was nothing. Not a sound nor flash of movement anywhere. On edge and grinding his teeth, Vincent let out a breath he didn't know he had been holding. He turned to walk away, holding his injured right arm. But as he did so, he came face to face with the man, both arms extended to Vincent's chest. Another strange light flashed and erupted from his palms, blasting Vincent backward again. Somehow, he managed to remain on his feet. What the hell was going on here? He had never seen anyone move without so much as a sound. And what was with these lights? Vincent's heart raced. He wasn't used to struggling in a fight, and his ego felt as bruised as his body. Then, he noticed something odd. Although the attack had enough force to push him back, it hadn't done any damage. He's run out of power, Vincent thought to himself excitedly. Dashing in at full speed, he hoped to catch his opponent off guard, only to receive a perfectly timed and heavy blow to the face. The man had anticipated Vincent's attack and countered it with precise accuracy. Then, the world changed. Everything was suddenly covered in a green hue, distorting the landscape and taking everything out of focus. Darkness faded in and out of sight while everything began to duplicate and spin. At that moment, Vincent found himself unable to comprehend the dazzling display of color and twisted scenery. Vincent's eyes shot open. Did I fall asleep? He wondered groggily. He was flat on his back, staring up at the night sky. Everything ached. The man suddenly appeared in his field of vision, looking down on him with a piercing gaze. What did you do to me? Vincent asked, rolling over to his hands and knees. The world spun around him, and he retched, upending the bile from his stomach. The man snickered. First time being concussed, huh? Small droplets of blood fell from Vincent's face onto the concrete. He held his hand up to his mouth to stop the bleeding. How about I do you a favor and explain what just happened? The man said, while putting his hands back into his pockets of his hoodie and sitting lightly on Vincent's back. You lost, Mr. Hero. Vincent spun around wildly to swat the man off him. His attack found nothingness, and he weakly fell to his backside. It was only a split second, but you lost consciousness. I can tell you aren't used to getting hurt, but 2 of the hits during our fight really rocked you, right? Vincent remained silent, staring at the ground and gathering his composure. The guy possessed an insane amount of strength and skill. Vincent was far outmatched, although he didn't want to admit the truth of it. Well, you have yourself to blame for that, the man continued. You see, both times, you decided to charge in like an idiot. He shrugged. I just used your power against you. It's easy to predict your opponent's movement when you know exactly how they'll attack. And you, Mr. Hero, always attack in a straight line. Is that right? Vincent relaxed a little, wiping the blood from his hand across the front of his singlet. It didn't seem like he would kill Vincent, and if he was going to, he probably would have done it by now. Say what you want about my fighting style, but even your attacks were weak towards the end. The man knelt next to Vincent. Is that why you're on the ground and can't get back up? Try as he might, Vincent was still unable to move. You need more time to recover, so let's talk for a bit longer. He stood and walked over to a large piece of unended concrete. He flipped it effortlessly with one hand and sat down on the smooth surface. Vincent didn't know what this guy was playing at. Nevertheless, he wasn't in a position to deny the extra time to rest. He felt along his side, assessing whether or not his ribs were broken. Firstly, the man continued, without waiting for an answer, I've been sent to watch you and assess your strength. There's a power that's been lost to this world for a very long time, and my boss thinks that you might possess it. The man played with one of the tips of his spiked maroon hair. Your raw strength is impressive, but not so much so that you normally catch our attention. Without proper training, you never amount to anything that special. He gave Vincent a belittling smirk. Instinctively, Vincent tried to stand back up, only to stumble and fall back down. His legs weren't responding like they usually would.
As for those red markings, that's something that would put you on our radar. I fought all manner of strong opponents, but I've never seen markings like that on a melee meister before. So tell me, and be honest, this wasn't the first time you've seen them, was it?
Vincent hesitated. He didn't want to tell this guy anything, especially after all he'd done. But after a moment, his reckless curiosity outweighed his distrust. No, he answered carefully. It's not the first time.
Tell me more.
The man stopped smiling, giving Vincent a cold, hard stare as if he could see right through him. Vincent smiled, his ego resurfacing along with some of his energy. Go to hell. I ain't telling you a damn thing. Not unless you get the vipers out of jail. The stranger scoffed.
You know damn well that I can't do that. Besides, those low-life bastards would just go right back to their usual racket and continue holding you back. Like I said, you needed someone to free you from this place, and I've done just that.
You piece of shit! Vincent yelled, his voice catching on a lump in his throat. All this just to get to me? The man stood, stalking slowly towards Vincent.
I get it. You disagree with my tactics. But tell me, Vincent, what was the alternative? Should I have killed them? They clearly couldn't be allowed to continue living here unchecked. Not everyone has a sudden change of heart like your friend Badou.
Vincent's head dropped. He knew it was true, but he couldn't bring himself to endorse the man's actions. He shouldn't have come in and made these decisions on his own. He was an outsider, after all.
That said, maybe taking them up the top of that cliff would have worked. You could have left them up there, and they'd have no way of climbing back down. That's way too far for a regular human to scale.
The man gave a humorless chuckle. It's not too far, Vincent snapped back quietly. There was one man who climbed that thing a long time ago.
Then he must have been a meister,
the stranger reaffirmed. There's that word again, Vincent thought to himself. He was beginning to understand that it referred to people with his type of power. Not that I owe you any explanations, but he definitely didn't have any powers. Vincent lowered his head. He was the real hero of the Ryuugas. Vincent took a moment before locking eyes with the stranger. But none of that matters now. What matters is that you know that locking him up wasn't the only solution. Vincent could feel his strength returning slowly. Just a little longer, he thought. So, you gonna apologize and get them out, or what? The man responded with a steely glare, devoid of emotion.
Haven't you been listening at all?
He asked slowly, as if Vincent was a simpleton.
Regardless of the alternatives, I did the right thing, given the circumstances. Now, if you come with us, we can—
Don't make me laugh, Vincent barked harshly. It doesn't look like we'll see eye to eye on this. Maybe that's because you've only got one good one to begin with. I said I'd kick your ass, and it's about time I came good on that promise. The man continued to look down at Vincent.
And how do you plan on doing that?
He asked, dumbfounded by Vincent's swagger. Well, you see, as you said, it was my own strength that was hurting me. You've given me time to recover and told me what I was doing wrong. So the bigger question is, just how do you plan to do any damage, now that I know what not to do? Vincent gave the man a wolfish grin. The markings on his body revealed themselves again, glowing brightly. Look at that. Seems like this thing's getting easier. Vincent put his hand on one knee and rose steadily, his breath visible in the cold night air. They stood face to face yet again. It's getting late. You sure your mommy won't be worried if you're out, huh? Little boy. The man visibly stiffened, clenching his jaw. Vincent placed his hand on the man's head and ruffled his hair a little. Once Vincent found your button, it didn't matter who you were or how dire the situation. He would always push it. You can fight, I'll give you that. But you just don't have what it takes to do any real damage anymore, he added arrogantly. Those light blasts really didn't do much. Vincent watched as the man raised his right hand and smirked.
Glad you think so,
he announced, clicking his fingers. Suddenly, a crushing thud vibrated throughout Vincent's entire body. His knees buckled, and his eyes rolled into the back of his head. The young stranger gave a breathy chuckle as an unconscious Vincent fell headfirst into the pavement. Before the red glow had faded from Vincent's skin, the man stilled. A peculiar mark glowed brightly through the back of Vincent's singlet. He leaned over and lifted the shirt, revealing a strange dark red symbol between Vincent's shoulder blades. The straight lines of the marking ran parallel to one another in various directions and slowly faded until they vanished entirely from sight.
Well, I guess that confirms it. Why did the Lord have to be someone like you? He hissed with disdain.
Vincent began to stir. His head was pounding, and he was not yet able to open his eyes. When did I fall asleep? He wondered, staring into the blackness behind his eyelids. A few more moments passed, and his eyes slowly fluttered open. He was still unable to move, but Vincent could feel his consciousness slowly returning. It felt as though his body was being carried. Then he was dropped hard onto a dusty surface with a heavy thud. Vincent turned his head to the side, only to see a familiar sight. He was now atop the cliffs, high above the ghetto. The moon still hung high in the sky. He couldn't have been out for long. Vincent had a case of déjà vu and wondered if this was how Badou felt earlier. The man stood over Vincent, leaning down close.
The fight's over. You lost. Badly. I've taken you up to the top of your precious little cliff. That way, you can get some rest without being disturbed. After all, we wouldn't want people to know the great hero of the ghetto lost a fight.
He mocked, sounding almost apathetic.
I'll give you a day to think about it, but if you decide you want to get stronger, I'll meet you here tomorrow at sunset. Who knows? Maybe you can become a real hero and make a difference.
Wait, what's your name? Vincent groaned. He felt himself losing consciousness again. The man looked blankly at Vincent for a few moments. A devilish grin crawled across his face, partly hidden by the shadows. The cross on his eye patch caught the moonlight and appeared to emit a piercing, eerie glow. Vincent's head fell back into the dirt, but before the darkness enveloped his mind completely, he heard a single sentence escape the man's lips.
My name is Zero.